Go to sleep, sweetheart. Pray for brains.
Let's get into these Reddit comments, shall we?
And let's pray to God Peter the animal abuser never gets an animal again. He's carrying on and on about how we can learn from animals, and how they are so caring. Peter, shut the hell up. And no, you weren't almost a victim of the Hollow Farms. Shut the hell up. Peter's newest response to what he reads here is him saying that he doesn't give any thought to the accusations and demeaning statements he makes in his drama videos about other creators. In essence, he's saying that he makes these horrid videos and then doesn't give it a second thought. He is basically affirming that he has no remorse and he's a cold-blooded person. Peter is so disgusting for this. Can we please talk about his level of delusion when it comes to Foxhollowfarms? He really and truly believes that he is the one person with all the knowledge of everything that happened there, and he is personally going to find out more details and discover more bodies. He has sources that he uses and who tell him information behind the scenes. He also firmly believes that he was lured there by Herb Baumeister back in the day with his friend, even though he has no recollection of it. This example just shows the sheer level of delusion and narcissism that Peter has. He truly believes that he is the center of this terrible tragedy simply because of his proximity to it. Here are some truths, Peter, since no one in your real life seems to have the guts to tell you the truth. You're not special. You don't have some insider's knowledge to this case. You aren't going to solve the mystery of finding more victims, the way a character would in the many books you claim to read. You most likely were never lured there by Herb Baumeister. If that conversation with your friend actually took place where he claimed that you guys went there, he most likely was making it up to scare you and you were gullible and took his words as gospel, and still do. Do you actually know this person who you are using as your source? Or was it some random person who'd met you who claimed to be from the area and you were gullible and believed him? I just can't with this entire situation. Leave those poor victims alone. Leave the families affected by this alone and stop speaking on it to profit off your dying channels. Yes, he seems extremely controlling over the whole situation and story. It's like he needs people to know he was involved. I always found it interesting how he claimed to be so into true crime but hardly ever knew any cases. He seems to be obsessed with this case simply because he's placed himself into it, which is just so weird and disrespectful to me. He has to make himself the center of every story or he's not interested. His claims that different production companies have reached out to him to be in documentaries about the case are laughable. What could he possibly add to anything? The fact that an old friend told him they went there. I got in trouble last year when he claimed a pharmacist told him he can take a painkiller and sit with them all day. They would babysit him. Because that's what a pharmacist is there for. Forget about all the other patients. Peter is the only important one. If he was in that much pain, wouldn't he want to take his medicine and get into bed? His stories are so full of holes. I called him out and he said I was wishing him death. Drama queen, his entire being emo is fake. Just like he claims the one smart neighbor who avoids him is homophobic. What? I'm sure he has a reputation in his community, and his neighbors who like peace and quiet avoid him like the plague. Imagine having to deal with a screaming raging lunatic whenever you do your gardening. Definitely a green card marriage. Questioning his constant confabulations, exaggerations, and outright lies is not wishing death on him. That's a regular manipulation tactic he uses to shame people into submission and silence them. Peter is a poor historian who is prone to melodrama and exaggeration. I worked in mental health for 25+ years. If a patient couldn't recall important details of their histories, then pertinent information needed to be obtained elsewhere. If possible, and within the guidelines of healthcare privacy protocols, family members and other people were questioned to determine what treatment was best. Without a proper diagnosis, there can be no effective treatment. In other words, questioning the history of patients happens all the time. Peter would know this if he was ever a social worker. Peter wears shirts that say sober AF and he grandstands non-stop about his long-term sobriety. That is more damaging to those struggling with repeated relapse and addiction. He's playing a victim of Baumeister, and shame on him. Peter is a pathological liar. As a relative of one of the victims, I was blissfully unaware of this until this moment. Never heard of this before. I saw just a bit of it. I can assure you he has no idea what he's talking about on this case. Not involved in any way with the case, the investigation, or the documentary in any way. Gross. I read a bit more of the transcript. This is disgusting. Who actually cares what this guy has to say? He's obviously an attention-seeking pathological liar. He and Goodyear deserve to be locked in a room to spout their lies at each other. People like this are the reason I refused to be interviewed until last year. Absolutely repugnant. You can tell he is in extreme denial about how pathetic his life actually is. I don't believe for a second that actually happened. I think he likes to make stories up to make himself feel better. I'm in a rabbit hole after watching the Hulu series and just pulled up this guy's YT. I can't even get past the first 10 minutes. He talks too much about so many other things that have nothing to do with FHF. Also, his voice is fucking annoying. You can tell he really loves himself. Sorry, not sorry. His vocal fry could stop a clock. An old vlog popped up on my feed today. Timestamp 11:50. He talks about going to Herb's house, never mentions he was lured there. That's a story he made up in his head. God, Peter is pathetic.
It's imp-
There ain't nothing to it. I'll give him a bit of a nudge and shove him in the ditch.
Ready! Watch out!
Just